shading the eyes, which is going to include also shading the muscles around the eyes, so the brow, the eye socket, not just, the white part of the eye and the pupil and the iris and the eyelashes, but I'm going to talk about shading all of this around here. So you need to be looking at that, especially it's more pronounced on the girl where her brow pushes outward. So you see the highlight here, and then there's shadow underneath. As the crease of the fold of the eye goes inward, it's all dark in there. Okay, the light is pretty much coming from the front. You can even see the lights reflected in her eyes. Remember that the eye is a sphere. It's a ball that's pushing outward. So that's why you get this little bit of puffiness underneath the eye, sort of like a little fold right here, because there's a ball underneath there that's sort of pushing outward. So the eye socket goes into the skull. There's an opening, and then there's a ball pushing through that. So it creates this line or this shadow all the way around here. And part of that goes kind of up onto the bridge of the nose a little bit as well. We'll get into that later on. But shading the eye. So, and also the eyelid, if it's visible, it's going to be a little bit lighter in here and get a little bit darker as it goes towards. So you can see a little bit of shading right here, and notice how it's a little bit brighter right here, because that's the part that's sticking out the most. Okay, so just be conscious of that. So as you're shading, okay, you can be thinking about, okay, darker here, a little bit darker here. Put some scrap paper under my hand here. So I like keep scrap, as you're shading, it's good to keep scrap paper under your hand so you don't smear your pencil lines that are underneath. So, okay, you have your fold line, a little bit of shading that comes up around here. So this goes in, this crease as it goes in. You're just going to kind of blur that line a little bit. You're going to keep that dark line. It might fade as it goes out. It gets deeper right in here where there's more of the fold, and then as it comes out, it fades out over here. So it's good to do this shading before you do your eyelashes. Well, you could do it after, it doesn't really matter. Okay, a little bit of shading under here, through here, kind of blur over top of that line, kind of form it around the brow. Have the fade as it goes up. Okay, there's a little bit of shading as it goes over towards the nose. This line is going to disappear with shading. In fact, you can start to kind of erase that a little bit so it's just very faint, because we want that to be, we want to separate. That's going to be a rounded edge. It's not a crease there. We only have lines where we have edges, defined hard edges. And creases, sorry. All right, then there's that little bit of shading. I'm not gonna go into the shading in great detail. I'm just gonna kind of get you into, and this is sort of gonna be a generic mix between the guy and the girl. I just wanna point out some things here. I don't wanna take a lot of time I would have to do kind of speed that up. So you notice how I'm holding my pencil back near the eraser, and I'm just kind of like, I'm holding it at a low angle, right? And I'm just touching the tip of it, a nice sharp point, because you're doing details, so you want to have a sharp point so you can do these tiny details. And I'm just kind of doing a blurred line here. And then at the center of that blurring, it may be just a tad darker to represent like the deepest part of that blurring, and it fades out as it goes this way, and it fades out as it goes this way, because that puffiness kind of disappears as you go towards the inner part of the eye. Okay, so I could spend some more time on that, but I want to talk about the inside of the eye now. So the inside of the eye, again, this is a sphere, so it's going to be a little bit darker in the corners, and this is really going to help to make your eyes look 3D. A little bit darker in the corners, and you've got this, it gets a little dark in here. You have that little piece of whatever that thing's called in the corner of your eye. It's not the tear duct. Everyone calls it the tear duct, but the tear duct is underneath, hidden. So a little bit darker in the corners, and you might have a little bit, darker shadow is. And then and then along the top, it's a little bit darker because your eyelashes actually come out over the eye and they cast a little bit of a shadow, and the eyelid casts a little bit of a shadow. So you can do a little shadow on top. And then your eyelashes, you can start with just darkening that line, okay, and make it a little bit thicker, because the eyelashes actually come towards you, and then they curve upward. So it's just going to be this thick cluster at first, and then with the guys' eyelashes, girls, either, and I don't know if she's got false eyelashes or not, but they might be. So obviously the girls' eyelashes, they try to make them look longer with mascara or false eyelashes, whatever. So hers going to be a lot longer. His not so much. Okay, so don't overemphasize them if you're drawing the guy. And then when you do those eyelashes, it's not just a whole bunch of lines. They're actually like in clusters, which are almost like little triangles. So cluster, cluster, cluster. Here's a little cluster. Here's some clusters, and then some individual ones in between. So, and they get, they're larger more towards the outside, smaller towards the inside. So what you do is you can sweep upward, right? And it's going to be, I'll draw it larger here to kind of get an idea. It's almost like a wave, kind of goes up like this, and then you have another one that sort of goes up like that. So they're kind of like in these clusters. And don't make them all exactly the same, but that's kind of how I would do it. They're sort of, leaning towards the outside of the eye a little bit. The more, actually, as you move this way, they kind of go outward like this, and then in the center, they start to be, almost maybe more upright, and then as they move this way, they start to go that way. Okay, so that's kind of the general pattern, in a very simplified form of what happens with the eyelashes. So kind of look for that when you're doing the girl. Okay, so you've got some eyelashes, and it's good you really want to flick your wrist at the end. Okay, lift so that you get a nice tapered line like that. You got to flick the wrist while you're kind of curving it. Okay, so you got to have a sharp pencil. A mechanical pencil works really good. So you do a few of those. This is going to look really weird because I got this guy and he's going to have these real long eyelashes. So get a couple of clusters. I can't take it. I got to erase that. And then do some single ones kind of in between here and there. Okay, random, along with the clusters. And these clusters are kind of obviously built up of lashes together. I'm drawing them real large, so it's taking me a lot, but it won't take you many pencil strokes to do those. And then lastly, you have, make sure you draw in the highlights if there's little highlights. I'm just going to put like a little highlight like right here, because I think there's just a little highlight on the guy's eyes, like right here. But in the girl, she has like two big highlights. Okay, actually three. There's one on either side of the pupil, kind of cutting off part of the pupil, and then there's that little tiny one there. Okay, so let's do my pupil. I'll do the pupil, make that nice and black. And again, make sure your iris and your pupil are nice and perfectly round. And then the iris, I'm initially just going to fill this in gray. Try to make it evenly gray. And then sometimes you'll notice a little bit darker ring, slightly darker around the outside. It's very pronounced on this guy, darker ring. Okay. So you can make that slightly darker around the outside. And then sometimes you can kind of see very faintly like these lines sort of going inward. Depending on the photographer and how close he got and how detailed the focus is, that may be more pronounced. Make sure you make that gray dark enough. People tend to, mine's probably not dark enough. Oh, come on. Okay. and then maybe I can go back and reinforce this a little bit on the outline. My pencil really needs to be super sharp for, in fact, I'm not really gonna do a bunch of lines. I'm gonna just kind of shade it, sort of going in and out like spokes on a wheel a little bit. And then probably this really needs to be darker up top. I'm gonna increase this shadow a little bit to deepen the eyes a little bit more, keep my white highlight. Okay, and those are the things to look for. That's pretty much it with the eyes. Okay, again, shaping the eyelid. You're trying to make it look lighter here. I don't have my eyelashes in. Oh, and lashes on the bottom. You have to be careful. The lashes on the bottom do not touch the white part of the eye. There's a little ledge right there. So see the white part of the eye, and then there's that little ledge right there. So when you do eyelashes on the bottom, they're sparse, they're not as long. Just leave that little bit of a gap there, okay? And then for the guy, there's not much there at all. You got to make sure you have a very sharp point and don't get too carried away with it. If anything, you could even, maybe leave them off on the guy a little bit. But with the girl, they're a little thicker, more pronounced. And sometimes the eyelashes are actually going to go past, on the girl, they're going to go past the corner of the eye, kind of out into here. Okay, so here's where the white part of the eye starts. The eyelashes go out beyond that. So make sure you're doing that as well. And that's how you do your eyes.